Hey, everybody, it's the weekend. Inside joke. Welcome to another edition of Thinking Out Loud, parentheses, Divisional Round edition, parentheses, of this podcast. Thank you for listening, watching, clicking, enjoying, sharing, commenting upon this show, however, and wherever you listen to it, whether it be the YouTubes, the socials, Siciliano show on YouTube, Thinking Out Loud on all your major podcast platforms for your audio listening enjoyment, whether it's the car, the workout, the airplane, wherever, or maybe to put inside your AirPod and just nod your head and pretend as if you're listening to your significant other, but you're actually listening to this show. Try it. Sometimes it works. Thank you again. My name is Andrew Siciliano. We are heading into the greatest football weekend of the year, as everybody likes to tell you. It's almost cliche at this point, but it kind of sort of is the truth, I think. We're down to the final 8 teams, and these are the best of the best. I mean, the teams that you truly mostly expected to be here. Probably not Washington, but hey, they crashed the party, and they're awesome. They're a great story. It's my hometown, and I'm happy that they have crashed the party and given those fans and that great city something to cheer for and cheer about. So, yay, go Commanders. And as we hear a plane in the background.
Interesting. Am I landing that plane?
Are you landing that plane? We'll land the plane. Well done, Sam Betesh. Yes. Say good day to you. And remind everyone that on the quote-unquote best football weekend of the year, we also have a national championship game on Monday. And Correct. If you want to look back to last year's scores, 3 of the 4 games were one-score games. So just backing it up, we had a field goal game, an 8-point game, and only one game was a blowout. The Texans went on the road to Baltimore, and in the early window on divisional weekend, because they are your guarantee for the early window in any playoff weekend, they were blown out by the Ravens. Hopefully this week doesn't have a blowout, but we do have at least 3 close and good games.
In regards to best football weekend, also last weekend now can claim and stake a claim potentially on that if you add in college football, because Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Honestly, last week was exhausting.
It was a lot. It was a long
Thursday,
stretch.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, exhausting.
Maybe too much. But in regards to NFL, this is the greatest weekend. Yes, it absolutely is. And I would say, and we'll get to it later, if you really ask yourself who the 5 best teams in football were all season,
they're all here.
5 of the 8 are right here, as we saw most of the season. And as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, I did have an interesting sighting at a random place last night in Beverly Hills. There was a Harrison Ford at Xi'an, beautiful restaurant here in Beverly Hills, quite delicious. But yeah, Harrison Ford hanging out. A little bit of a name dropper. He wasn't there with me having dinner, but yes, the restaurant dropper, city dropper, and Harrison Ford dropper. But yes, may the force be with all of us for that one.
Did you tell him you loved him in the new season of Shrinking and the first season of Shrinking?
True. And of course, when you see Harrison Ford now, if you're not watching Shrinking, you would say, oh, wow, Harrison Ford doesn't look the way I remember him. And if you are watching Shrinking, it's, oh my God, that's the guy. I mean, he looks exactly like he does in the show, obviously, and a tremendous show that we should all be watching. Yes.
Did you tell him that I was the first? Excuse me. Wow, I'm fighting sinuses here.
That's all right.
We can keep that in just to prove this is live. Yeah. Did you tell him that I was the first guy there at Penmar many years ago to take the photos of his crash? Thank God he survived Millennium Falcon. Actually,
yes.
Small yellow plane on the golf course. I think the 15th hole.
That's true. Maybe that was the plane that we just heard flying
Go ahead.
overhead.
Yeah,
so
could have been. Yeah. Google it. Google it. Andrew Siciliano Harrison Ford plane.
That's amazing. You were the first.
My photo. I was the first. I was looking at a house in the neighborhood, and someone said a plane went down. I went over there, and I took photos, and I didn't post them. I asked others, like, no. They took a guy out of there. The guy's okay, and I took photos, and then I posted. This guy landed. This plane landed. I'm told. On the green that the guy's okay, thank God. And then I walk away, get in my car, my phone starts blowing up. TMZ and CBS and CNN, like, can we take your photos? I'm like, why? That's Harrison Ford. I'm like, oh, wow. And then weeks later, people went, how did you not make money off that? I'm like, it's just like make money off a plane crash. I'm like, sell the photos. Once I tweeted them, they're out there. It's not like I'm going to go after people like I'm Michael Buffer for using my content on, come on.
I think you did
Michael
the right
Buffer
thing.
going after people. Look into that as well on the Google.
Yes.
Quick thought before we get into these games. And we're going to go backwards. We're going to go last game to first game because we think the last game is maybe the best. Well, maybe not true. The two Sunday games are probably the juiciest here. Just big thought experiment. And I did one of my beach walk-in talks. I'm going to post it later today on TikTok, Andrew.Siciliano, which should still be around on Sunday morning. Andrew Siciliano on IG, and then this right here on YouTube. Siciliano Show will do a YouTube short on it. 7 of these 8 teams, and this is really a team building thing as well, looking ahead to the draft in April. 7 of these 8 teams have first round quarterbacks. And the outlier is Jalen Hurts, who was 53rd overall, top of the second round pick. So as you look ahead to the draft, and as you say, I don't know about this quarterback class, and there's a long way to go between now and that night in Green Bay, but you probably do need one of those guys. Now, we could argue whether or not one of those guys is in this draft, and this is a very this playoff bracket is a very 2018 heavy draft, but whether or not 2025 has those picks, I don't know yet. But you need one of those guys. We have 2 number 1 overall picks in this draft. Goff and Stafford, different eras. We have 2 number 2 overall picks. C.J. Stroud and Jaden Daniels in back-to-back seasons. Josh Allen, number 7 in 2018. Patrick Mahomes, number 10 in 2017. Lamar Jackson, number 32 in 2018. And then 4 years ago now, Jalen Hurts, number 53. So as you look to build a team, and as Harrison Ford circles back around Sam's Valley home, you probably need one of those guys. Joking aside, there's no fire in your neighborhood, right? That's not a fire.
No, that is someone getting lessons, I'm sure, and just and it's fine. Yes. Beautiful. Van Nuys Airport, by the way, if you're ever lucky.
Right, you're very close to the Van Nuys Airport. So for all you know, that is Aaron Rodgers flying back home in a private jet, filming another episode of Enigma, which I do recommend. It is worth watching on Netflix. We took that dive down that road last night. I digress. Let us get to the games. Let us entertain you as well. If you're at a Chicago restaurant, let's open up with the Ravens and the Bills. This is a rematch from a game that we saw earlier this year, week number 4. I watched that game at the airport in Vegas after flying, the Browns and the Raiders that night. Then I was flying back to LA. Anyway, in that game, the Ravens came out. They punched him in the mouth early with Derrick Henry opening play from scrimmage, and they played a dominant game. This is a game that some people would love to see as the AFC Championship game, not to take the Chiefs out of the equation here, but these are your 2 MVP favorites, especially in the American Football Conference. And these are 2 massive heavyweights, 2 2018, as just mentioned, drafted quarterbacks who are going to be playing in the snow, potentially, and the cold, and freezing January, Buffalo, amazing conditions. Everyone who saw the Ravens beat the Steelers last week, and I also recommend this episode of Hard Knocks, the last one. I think it's the last one. I assume it is. Maybe they're doing another one. I highly, highly, highly recommend you watch it because you could see behind the curtain as to how the Ravens dismantled the Steelers. They knew they were going to run the ball, and they ran it right at them and through them and over them. And I think they can do it again this week. Now, defensively, the Bills rushing, pretty good. They're number 12, okay? Overall, middle of the pack, they're number 17. Third down, awful, like near the bottom of the National Football League. But their turnover differential, pretty good. Matter of fact, it's amazing. Matter of fact, it's number 1. Okay, so that defense is going to force turnovers. The Ravens have to hold on to the ball. They can't have it like the first Steeler game. They can't, because if you do that, you give Josh Allen short field here, they're going to take advantage of it. And Josh Allen, this is Josh Allen's year to rip open his shirt and do the Cam Newton thing and show that there is a Superman shirt on underneath it. But I also think it is Lamar Jackson's year. And even without Zay Flowers, as we sit here today, he's officially doubtful John Harbaugh says there's still a chance he may play. But in this day and age, and I don't know the numbers, Sam. I should have looked it up. But when it says doubtful, you ain't playing. I mean, you're not. Matter of fact, if you play when you're doubtful, the league may get suspicious. Doubtful usually means these days, we're going to call you doubtful now, and then we're going to make you think about it for another day. And then tomorrow, 24 hours before the game, when we have to do our standard elevations from the practice squad to get guys on the official roster onto the 53 for Sunday, that's when we downgrade you to out. That's how they play the game. Most teams do it these days. So I'd be stunned if Zay Flowers played. But on the flip side of it, they won. They looked pretty good last week without him. Rashad Bateman stepped up. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. This team has weapons, and Lamar is playing as well as he's done ever. He's playing better than he did last year when he won the MVP. He's an ascending player. I had this conversation with Kevin Stefanski 2 weeks ago. Lamar Jackson and Myles Garrett, two different draft classes, 2018 for Lamar, Myles Garrett, 2017. They are the rare player that just won major awards. Last year, Myles DPOY, and then the MVP for Lamar, and yet got better the next year. They are ascending players after those major milestones and awards, and you could argue they're better this year than last, and they're probably not going to win it because I think everyone's decided Josh Allen is going to win the MVP this year. But Brian Baldinger said it great this week. Lamar Jackson occasionally misses a throw, but he almost never misses a read. Think about that. Used to be the other way around, right? Oh, he'd make these great throws, but maybe he didn't see it, right? Maybe the ball shouldn't have gone there, but Lamar made it happen. Not like that anymore. He doesn't miss the read. Yeah, everyone makes a bad throw every now and then, although he doesn't throw many. He has taken his game to another level. I'm not rooting for Lamar Jackson. I'm not rooting for Josh Allen. I'm not rooting for anybody here. I'm just rooting for a great game. And I think this has the makings of a classic with the weather and the snow, and having been, Sam, to a couple of bad weather games of late, it is far more enjoyable on the couch.
This, as you said, to be one of these all-time games, and we don't have to go back very far, 2021, of course, Chiefs and Bills, we all remember. That's the one where the overtime rule was changed because everyone was upset that Josh Allen didn't get the ball back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think you and I are on the same page here. Seems like you are leaning Ravens here, despite Zay Flowers, right? Absolutely. And it's interesting because for a lot of the season, it felt, especially after beating Kansas City, that the Bills were going to be that team to get the shot at taking out the Chiefs. But Bills' last 3 seasons have lost in this very round, divisional round. Now, you can say the 35-10 means it's going to be just like it was. There are 3 significant defensive starters who did not play in that game for Buffalo, including Matt Milano. But what happened in that game is impossible for me to wipe out of my mind. Again, not a close game. And again, in Baltimore, not in Buffalo, much different with the weather, et cetera. But
it's honestly, and I'm cutting you off, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Much like I can't get out of my mind what the Eagles did to the Rams here as well.
Exactly. Yes, and you're right, and we're going to get to that. It's tough to take that out when you see something that dominant. Again, because that game started the way that it did. And remember, at the time, the Bills were perfect. Again, 3-0, but perfect at that time of the season. And the way that game opened with Derrick Henry ripping off for 87 yards and running for 199 in that game. He also caught a touchdown pass in that game. That was such a statement from the Ravens. Ravens also the only team in NFL history, and you talk so much about the rushing, the only team in NFL history to pass for 4,000 yards and run for 3,000 yards. That's ridiculous. That's balance. To Baldinger's point, it speaks to what Lamar Jackson has done. And of course, he's part of both of those categories, obviously, with what he does with his legs. Not that Josh Allen doesn't do the same thing. It feels, yes, like the Bills are more the team. Okay, we've been waiting. And of course, the Bills are constantly the bridesmaid, right? I mean, we talk about that, of course, with the 4 straight Super Bowls that were not won. And now, but the Ravens. There is something special about the Ravens. There's something special about the way they play on offense in particular and what they would be able to do in the snow, considering what their strength is in running the ball. And Lamar, yes, looks right. And I think that moniker of what Lamar can't do in the postseason is now behind us, I'd say. I mean, both of these quarterbacks would have the same. They've each lost to the Chiefs or the Bengals over the last 2.5 seasons. But this feels like the Ravens game. There is just something there. And again, look, could Amari Cooper be the difference? Are there pieces that the Bills have that I wouldn't be stunned if Josh Allen just had that cape and put it on his shoulders and made it happen, of course. But one other thing to keep in mind, John Harbaugh, the Ravens have 13 playoff wins over his 17 seasons. There are only 2 franchises with more wins over that time, and it's the Patriots and the Chiefs. Not surprising, but that's it. This is the heavyweight fight. I said it earlier. There are 5 of the best teams in football that are left in this weekend. 2 of them are going head to head in this game, Ravens and Bills. And I'll say it's a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game with the Ravens and the Chiefs once again.
Listen, it takes a lot to go into Buffalo and win. I am not an under, and the Ravens are the only road favorite this weekend. I don't know what it's going to close at. Let's look it up. What is it now?
Is it 2.5?
Sit here, 2.5. I don't know. NFL scores right now. It is down to 1.5 for recreational purposes only, and past performance is not necessarily indicative of future gains. And this is not in any way advice for your investments, whatever they are, hopefully legal. I'm in no way tied to this nor giving advice. It is not easy to go in there and win in Buffalo, in the playoffs, in the weather. This would be a monumental achievement.
Perfect this season so far.
Yeah, monumental achievement. I also think you have to look at the Ravens this year are giving up like roughly 18 points a game against the teams that they faced that turned out to be playoff teams. The Bills are giving up 33 points a game, something like that. Look, the Bills beat some good teams this year. I'm not suggesting they had some cakewalk schedule and they somehow, they're not what their record says they are, for Pete's sake. They lost to the Ravens and the Texans those back-to-back weeks 4 and 5. They beat the Chiefs. They get the Chiefs their first loss. Can't forget about that week 11. They did lose to the Rams in that shootout, week 14. They beat the Lions, but they gave up 42. And look, they stomped on the Broncos. And that's the one that means the most right now. They stomped on a team at home in the wild card round, in a playoff game. But the Ravens have this, and I don't know the history here, the context here. I should be able to look it up. I could have. I didn't. The Ravens have the number 1 rush offense, the number 1 rush defense. That is a formula for success. They ran for 300 yards last week. Was it DeMonte Casey? There was a Steeler DB, I can't remember who it was, who said, man, giving up 300 yards in the air is one thing. Giving up 300 yards on the ground as a defense is worse. It's demoralizing. And that's what the Ravens can do for you. I know the Bills are running the ball a heck of a lot better this week, and James Cook had another hundo last week, and he had 16 touchdowns, most in the NFL on the ground this year. He's a great player. I'm glad they got that part of their game going. Joe Brady, big reason why. But you're going up against the number 1 run defense with a 400-pound Michael Pierce in the middle. Michael Pierce.
Will he
and
pick
they
the ball
used
up
my
again?
audio on Hard Knocks.
It was so
they didn't use all of it. I took a shot at our great friends on the Ravens PR staff, Chad Steele and Kevin Burns, now retired. They did a great job, but Michael Pierce is listed at 355.
No chance.
Come on. And I said on the air after he had the pick week 18, I'm like, that guy's not an ounce under 375. And then like a minute later, when we were still talking about it, I go, Ravens PR staff, come on, who you fooling? There's no way that guy's under 4 bills.
Come on, Chad. Come on,
There's
Chad.
no way he's under 4 bills. No way. But you're running through him in the middle. Obviously, Nnamdi Madubuike, Odafe Owe came into his own, finally got those sack totals up. He never had him at Penn State. I remember talking, then he was Jason Owe coming out of Penn State, and that was the big knock against him. right? Because he's not Micah Parsons. Mike had all the sacks. And it was, well, he never had production. And we're on live TV. And I said, hey, Jason, you know what I would tell the people that said you never had the sacks? He goes, what? And I pulled up his PFF numbers. And I said, hey, I would tell you that I had the best run defense grade of defensive ends in the Big Ten last year. I don't know that he realized that. And he's like, yeah, like, thank you. Yeah, I might use that kind of thing. Well, the Ravens didn't get his fifth-year option. This year, you know what? Here come the sack numbers. Or no, they did get his fifth-year option, and now, this year, here come the sack numbers. So, good for him, and I think the Ravens are going to win this game. I am rambling. Let's get to the game you care most about, which is the earlier game on Sunday. As I said here, we are going backwards. That game would be the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the Rams of Los Angeles. I heard on the radio earlier today somebody say, why couldn't you do both NFC games on Sunday and then the AFC games on Saturday? Well, because the Rams played Monday night in Phoenix, so you can't put them on Saturday in Philadelphia. That doesn't work. I just got done helping out with the Rams charity event here. Just great event. So many heartbreaking stories. Just listening to these stories and trying to lend a hand. The Rams at SoFi or next to SoFi at Hollywood Park, all their partners and so many people reaching into their hearts and their basements and their closets and their attics to help and give supplies. And this was a distribution setup and event here for the Rams, helping with those supplies. But the Rams have been, I'm talking about exhausted. The players are the bubble here. Everyone within the organization has been working around the clock on relief efforts and worrying about their own home and their own neighbors, but they were giving back to the community today. I digress. The Rams got back very early Tuesday morning, and now they are going to head to Philadelphia for a 3 Eastern, a noon Pacific, consider that start time on Sunday, where it's going to be cold. We already heard the inauguration is moving indoors. That storm is getting to the East Coast. It's going to hit Buffalo, and it's going to hit Philly, and it's going to be snowing and cold with wind chills in the teens. The Rams won in New York earlier this year, where the temps were in the teens, wind chills were in the teens. They beat the Jets. This is a far, far, far different task. As I said earlier, I cannot get out of my head, and Sam, you and I were both at that game, the image of the Eagles road grading, really, for lack of a better description, the Rams at SoFi when they were here. It was a primetime game on a Sunday night, and they ran them down. Saquon had that massive game, and it was, if you're a Rams fan, disheartening. The defense, however, since that game has turned things around. You go to New Orleans, you win. You beat the Bills. You gave up 40 points, but you beat the Bills. You beat the Niners. You beat the Jets. You beat the Cardinals. You lost to the Seahawks where you sat everybody. I know none of those opponents, save for the Bills, matches the Eagles, but your defense and the defense that you saw on Monday night against the Vikings is playing at a far different level than what you saw on that Sunday night, against the Eagles. But they have to prove that they could punch the bully back. They were bullied, and now Jared Verse and Byron Young and Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk and Michael Hoyt and Christian Roseboom and you name it, Quentin Lake, they have to prove that they can stand up to the bully. I think their secondary is going to do just fine. But you can't put your secondary in a situation where you dedicate so much to stopping the run that Jalen Hurts has easy throws, he connects, and you get beat on the explosives. I think Matthew Stafford's going to be fine. I would feel a lot better if Blake Corum was up as the number 2. He's broken his arm. He's out. He's not going to play in the postseason. I'd feel a lot better. Because if it's a snow game, it's likely a run game, although there's an old cliche that a lot of coaches and players will push back against. They don't think that's the case. Wide receivers will tell you that they like snow games because they have the advantage over the DB. They know where they're going. They're going to change direction. They're going to cut. They're going to run a comeback. Whatever they're going to do, they know where they're going. And then the DB has to stop and obviously follow, right? They have to adjust, and they are the ones more likely to slip on bad turf or snow or whatever. But I digress. A snow game favors the Eagles. We know they're the better rushing team. This would be an upset. I think the Rams can do it, but I don't have nearly the confidence, candidly, of this road team winning as I do the Ravens winning on the road in Buffalo.
Yeah, this is such an interesting game because the Rams are peaking, if you will. You just went through what they've done from a resume standpoint. What the Rams have been doing recently is incredibly impressive. But the game that you and I were at with what Saquon did. Now, do I expect Saquon to rush for 255? Do I expect him to have 300 scrimmage yards the way he did on that particular night? No, I do not. But this Eagles team does two things incredibly well, as we know. To be the number one defense in the league and to have the best rushing offense in the league, that's quite a powerful combination. And the Rams, as impressive as they were against Minnesota, 9 sacks, giving up only 9 points. Don't forget also what the Eagles did. And a lot of people coming out of that Green Bay game, and I'm not one that likes to dissect playoff victories. You know, most of the time when you're talking about a team and what didn't go right in a playoff game that you win and you're moving on to the next round, it's tough to say this didn't go right or that. There was a little bit of a false sense of the Eagles that they should have run away from the Packers, probably because of the way the game started. And I remember, Andrew, you were a little conflicted. That game started. No doubt it was a fumble. Was it recovered by the Eagles? Questionable, maybe.
Absolutely not.
Game, right? I mean,
no.
I don't know that there was an angle that showed. Now, there wasn't an angle to show that they didn't. It was called on the field, whatever.
It was one of those ones where if it had been called the other way, there was no way on God's green earth it would have been given to the Eagles.
Correct.
There is no image of the Eagles recovering the football.
Right. Trotter and DeJean both had their hands on the ball, but it looked clearly at that time as if the Packers dropped it and stumbled on it on the ground. But regardless, my point being, that game started with an opening punch by the Eagles, and then, of course, the touchdown to Dotson, up 7-0, then stopping the Packers, going up 10-0, and it felt as if the Eagles should just roll that game. And so when the offense was no longer putting up numbers the rest of that game, it felt like, oh, maybe the Eagles offense is struggling. Then you've got A.J. Brown reading Inner Excellence on the sideline with his book and all of that. But don't forget, the Eagles gave up 0 points in the first half to the Packers. They gave up 10 points overall. And remember, Saquon kneeled on what could have been a touchdown. So that 22-10 score could have been 29-10, and it could have looked a lot different. That was a dominating defensive performance, no doubt about it. Seems to me this could be a defensive game that way. And to your point about what could happen outside of the run game, of course, the Rams are thinking all week, we're not going to let that happen again. We're not going to let Saquon beat us again. But remember, this was also one of A.J. Brown's best game of the seasons. That Sunday night game, A.J. had 109 and a touchdown in that game. A.J. was a difference maker. Every time it was third down and Jalen needed somewhere to go, he was finding A.J. Brown in that game. I expect him to be able to do the same. And Jalen is being asked to do just enough. He is not a game manager. Jalen has the ability to take over a game, but what Sirianni has decided this season is that we're not going to let our offense lose the ball. That's it. They just, and they have Saquon Barkley, obviously, with the seasons he's having. It makes perfect sense that they're giving him the ball the way that they are. So that's the way this offense is running. I would be stunned. I'm not going to say this would be the most stunning of the weekend because we know that there's 2 games coming up that we haven't spoken about that I think both of those outcomes would be more surprising. But what we saw in week 12, that is hard. And you and I spoke a lot about the record. Exactly. And you and I spoke a lot about the record. I mean, Saquon Barkley was up for that record. He was up for the Dickerson record because of what he did in that game against the Rams. That changed it all. When he ran for 255 yards in that game, then it became that 2105, 2106 was in his sights. And I just want to say one thing. The Eagles may have not gotten the record for Saquon, but no team in NFL history has ever rushed for more yards in a season. Now, yes,
Right.
extra game, but 3,048 yards rushing. No team has ever run for more yards than the Eagles did this season. And also remember, Jalen's a little part of that as well. I expect Jalen to make a
Big
few
part.
plays with his legs in this game on Sunday. But you're saying Philly, it would be hard for me at this point to go against Philly with what we've seen. And again, I just think there was a difference all year in the NFC. I do. I think the Lions and the Eagles, and even there, I think the Lions over the Eagles, but I think the Lions and Eagles were clearly a cut above the rest of the NFC for the majority of the season. When you look at the opponents and when you look at what happened week in and week out, the Eagles and Lions were the two best teams in the NFC. I'd be stunned not to see them in the NFC Championship game.
There was there's a point, there's a video I posted this week on all the above mentioned socials, the YouTubes, the TikToks, now still here for now, and IG, in which I said the Rams could make some history. Some people misunderstood it. They say, oh, the Bills already did this. Let me clarify it again. The Rams are the first team in NFL history. Now, we went to a 14-game schedule in 61, a 16-game schedule in 78, and then a 17-game schedule in 21. I can't remember. Either way, the Rams are the first team in NFL history to beat two teams that had 14 regular season wins when they played them. People go, what about the Bills? The Bills beat the Chiefs and the Lions. They did. But neither had 14 wins at the time. Okay? They've since subsequently got to 14 wins. Chiefs 15 wins. But the Rams beat the Vikings. And why am I drawing a blank?
And then now they will have the Eagles.
All right. Okay. I'm sorry. So if they beat the Eagles, I apologize. I misspoke. The Rams, if they beat the Eagles, would be the first team in the history of the league to beat two teams that had 14 regular season wins. When the Bills beat the aforementioned Lions and Chiefs, neither had won 14 games. So the Rams could make some history here. And then, as luck would have it, they could potentially then go to Detroit and do it 3 weeks in a row if they were to beat the Lions. So no one's ever done that. A lot of people want to punch holes in that. Oh, you're like, okay, I get it. It was a very specific hole I was trying to go through there, or needle, thread.
Thread the needle, yeah.
Right, thread the needle, so to speak. But that would be pretty impressive. The other thing that was convoluted, Andrew, thank you, is what Jared Verse said. So Jared Verse spent some time growing up in Pennsylvania. He's obviously the defensive rookie of the year. Cast your vote right now for the Rams. Was a beast, had the scoop and score in the playoff game Monday night. This, remember, after he had said back in the spring he wants to return kicks. Rams wouldn't let him. I asked Sean McVay off to the side. I'm like, hey, Jared said he wants to return kicks. He said, yeah, no bleeping way. Jared Verse said this: I hate Eagles fans. They're so annoying. I hate Eagles fans. He then repeated that multiple times and then said, quote, when I see the green and white, I hate it. I actually get upset. Like, I actually genuinely get hot. He said that game we're at SoFi this year, Eagles fans were shouting obscenities at him. He said he could hear those obscenities even though he was pregame with headphones on down in the field. I didn't even do nothing to him. It was my first time playing. Oh, I hate Eagles fans. Saquon today, very stern look on his face. Man, I wouldn't have said that. I love Eagles fans, man. They're going to certainly respond. And I'm like, okay, Saquon, you said the right thing. I get it, obviously. Of course he loves Eagles fans. He's also a Pennsylvania guy. But number one, does anyone outside of Philadelphia like Eagles fans? No. Number two, do we really think Jared Verse's comments is going to change the reaction or reception that he and his teammates are going to receive on Sunday? No. What are they going to do? Instead of throwing one egg at the bus, throw multiple eggs at the bus? Instead of putting up both middle fingers, they're going to have their kid on their shoulder putting up their middle fingers as well? What, instead of mooning the bus, they'll have their whole family moon the bus? Like, what are they, instead of questioning their lineage and their mother, like, what are they going to do with a bullhorn? Like, there's nothing you can do to make Eagles fans treat you worse than they are already going to treat you. Like, this idea that Jared Verse is going to make it worse now. They're not. He's not. This has nothing to do with anything. The headline here would have been if Jared Verse said, man, I love Eagles fans. I love them. Nobody loves them unless you're in Philadelphia. And I say this out of respect. They're a different kind of crazy, and crazy's not a compliment. Okay? They're not. And I could say a lot of things and unpack. I'm not going to, because they're good fans because they're their fans. Okay? But they're never going to treat the other fans well. They're not, with some exceptions. A tip of the cap to the Eagles, who have some bars here in LA. They're fan clubs. And one of them's in Santa Monica. The Eagles tweeted out today that at that bar in Santa Monica on Sunday, there's going to be a big watch party, and there's going to be a big donation drive to give and to help the victims, those affected here in Southern California with the wildfires. That is awesome. So in their heart, they're good people, but not on Sundays. They're not. They're never on Sundays.
No,
they're bad people on Sundays. So, let's just call it like it is.
Now, SoFi many times has been overrun by the opposing team. That has happened to the scene. Everyone knows that Rams games can be for the other team, and Chargers certainly know that it happens, and it did that Sunday night game. You and I were there, overrun. I'll say this much as far as Eagles fans being special. I was sitting next to a father and a son at that game. The 6-year-old son had a shirt on that said F Dallas, and it was spelled all the way out. The 6-year-old son had a shirt on that was F.
Is that
Dallas.
Good parenting?
So and even as much as I wanted to love in that moment, I really questioned what decisions were made that morning on the way to the game. But you're absolutely look, you are right. Those fans are going to be rabid regardless. Now, maybe a little more towards Verse. I would say, yes, we're going to see maybe a sign.
What could they do differently?
No, nothing.
Like
there will be a sign. No, there will be a sign in the stands that has something special for Verse. I would, of course. I think, yes, of course there will be now for Verse. And it's what it really did more than anything, though. It allowed Saquon to stamp himself yet again as an Eagle. That's what's nice about Saquon responding. That's all. That is what's cool, is now he gets to say, I am truly a Philadelphia Eagle. That's really what it says more than anything.
I'm not criticizing Saquon. Saquon said the right things. That's fine. He's not the only one to go. Jared Verse, now you're going to get it. Like, get what? Like it's going to be any worse?
No. It's going to be
come on. No. Listen, when I worked for the network, and I was fortunate enough to go to every stadium, right? And you're down to the field, and you're the guy on TV. And I'm very fortunate, very grateful I had that opportunity. I'm a lucky guy. Wherever you go, and Philadelphia included in here, the fans are great. It's like, hey, there's the NFL Network guy. They couldn't be nicer, including in Philadelphia, including in Pittsburgh. When you go in there with another team's colors on, even if they liked you at the network, you're now in the other team's colors. Like, I remember years ago, I went into Minnesota and I was wearing Rams gear because I was working with the Rams. It was a preseason game. We were playing the Vikings, meaningless preseason game. Mike Zimmer walks up to me. We have a good relationship. Mike Zimmer walks up to me, and in the most endearing Mike Zimmer way ever, goes, "What the fuck are you doing wearing that shirt?" He was joking. I'm like, "Oh, I did their preseason." He's like, "He's messing with you. I had no idea." Like, it was all in good nature, right? But like when you walk in with the other colors on, it gets different. A couple of weeks ago in Pittsburgh, okay? Now, AFC North football, like any divisional football, it gets intense. It gets intense. Cincinnati, everybody was nice. Baltimore, it was too cold. Nobody was in any mood to be rude. The organizations are fine, right? Pittsburgh, my partner and I, Nathan, were walking to the tunnel to head upstairs. And this guy leans over and goes, "Hey, guys, could you please tell Myles Garrett that," and then bleepity, 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 bleep. Like, could you send that message to him? I'm not going to repeat it. And I looked up and I went, actually, sir, I won't. But you have a good day.
You're such a thing.
And I think he was surprised that I looked up with a smile and answered him politely. Actually, sir, I won't give him that message, but you have a good day. Like that, just like that. And he's like, oh. So it's something about Pennsylvania. As my grandmother would say, bless your heart.
Here's the thing. She's a nice girl.
My grandmother, who was born in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Anyway, Western Pennsylvania at that. All right, let's move on to the Saturday games because I'm taking too much time. 1 sec. I'm sending a text.
That's all right. You want to go Saturday night or Saturday day?
Which you want to do first? I don't care.
Let's go with the lines here. Let's go with lines here.
Okay, Lions Detroit. Say it right now. If Jaden Daniels, and Kyle Brandt said this morning, we are of the same like mind here. If Jaden Daniels can go into Detroit and pull this off, to quote Dennis Green, crown him.
Yeah.
Crown is behind. I gave you that game last week. That was one that I felt confident. Like, this is the one where I think he's going to stun the world, and he and they collectively, because it's not just one man, did. I think, all right, I'm comfortable saying that the Commanders are going to score points. I'm not comfortable in saying that they're going to score enough points to overcome what the Lions can do offensively. And that's the reason I can't pick Washington here. I'm going to pick Detroit. I think the sentiment, we're not talking about coaches on this pod, Sam, the sentiment all week has been Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are both going to be head coaches elsewhere next year, deservedly so. They both deserve that promotion. But I just can't see, even with the Lions injuries, Alex Anzalone is back now. They've had a week to get a little bit healthy. David Montgomery's coming back. That's huge. Take some of the workload off Jahmyr Gibbs. And we thought he was done for the year. Now Montgomery is coming back. Just look at their point totals. So they had their bye week 5. Okay. Before their bye, they scored 42 on the Seahawks. After the bye, 47, 31, 52, 24, 26, 52, 24, 23, 34, 42 in a loss to the Bills, 34, 40, and 31. You're going to have to score 30 points to beat them. And even with the banged up defense, I'm just doing math here. I could give you rankings and this and that. It's that place is as loud as it gets. I thought I was at the 2018 NFC Championship game in New Orleans, and to this day, that is the loudest indoor stadium and indoor game I've ever been to. The Rams beat the Saints. Okay, everyone knows what happened in that game.
Roby Coleman.
Well, also Jared Goff had his face mask pulled.
Yep.
180 degrees. Well, 90 degrees. Wasn't called. Saints fans, you just forget that. You also forget that the Saints had the ball first. Like, really? Anyway, I digress. In overtime. That was the loudest building I've ever been in, and I'm convinced to this day that there might have been some artificial enhancement of that noise. I am told by people that were at the Rams-Lions playoff game last year, the one in which the Lions won and Kirby Joseph, ruined 10 months of Tyler Higbee's life. Some people said that building was louder last year. So to go into Detroit and pull this off, I think this is where it ends for the Commanders. I'm not going to bother you with X's and O's. I just think there are too many other factors at play here, and I can't see the Commanders doing it. I know that's lazy analysis. Believe me, I've worked in this business long enough, worked with enough analysts where I'm like, that's lazy analysis right there. No names. 99% of the people I've worked with, phenomenal, love them all. But every now and then we all come to work and we're like, oof, hold on, what are we doing here? We've all had those days. And then you just give the low-hanging fruit. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that's what I'm offering you right now. That's how I feel about the game, as lazy as that sounds.
I'll reach just one branch up for just one X or O. I'm not sure if it's an X or an O here. 30th ranked rushing defense.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's just so difficult to picture the Commanders winning this game. Detroit of late, think of the Minnesota game to end the season. Think really of that game with no David Montgomery, what Gibbs was able to do to a Brian Flores defense that we all thought was impressive throughout the season. Ran through it. And now Washington, which is nowhere near on that level, with David Montgomery back. And I don't expect David Montgomery to be getting the workload that he had most of the season. I don't expect this to be a 50-50 split with Gibbs. This is still a Gibbs game as far as I see it. First of all, Gibbs has scored a touchdown in every playoff game he's ever been in.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually got a rushing touchdown in 34 of his 35 total games in the NFL. He has carried the load and carried it well without David Montgomery. This team did not skip a beat without Montgomery. We both know that the injuries on the defensive side are probably, I'm not going to say more significant than Montgomery, but those are the ones that potentially would cost the Lions if they are to lose this season at any point. That's what we will likely be saying, is if they hadn't been injured defensively, yada, yada. Aiden Hutchinson, number one, of course. But this is a task for Washington with what their run defense has done. And we remember that early in the season, it was the secondary we were worried about with Washington, and the Lattimore trade, even though he missed a number of games. That has helped. That has helped, even though Evans did get in the end zone for Tampa last week. I just don't see a way that Washington can stop this rushing offense. This team has just run the ball so well. Forget about what Goff and St. Brown and Laporta and Jameson, what they've been able to do, obviously, in spreading the ball around with Goff has been unbelievable. And you rattled off those games after the bye. Remember that Seattle game Monday night before the bye. Goff was also perfect. Somehow it wasn't a perfect passer rating, but he was, what was he, 18 of 18, whatever it was. He was perfect throwing the ball in that game. So this offense has been on a historic clip. But when you look at a team, what are the Lions, I believe that's the number one scoring offense in the league in the Lions. And the 30th rushing defense for a team that we know can run the ball so well. It just is. You said it's lazy. I'm not lazy here. It doesn't make sense. Now, Jaden Daniels, one thing I do want to point out, if the game is close at the end, if it comes down to it, if this is a one possession game, if this is a one possession game, it's 5 straight games. They've won 5 in a row on the final play of the game. Zeros. The clock strikes win for Washington 5 for 5. 5 for 5, which means if Jaden's got the ball with a chance to win this game after the 2-minute warning, watch out. Watch out, because you said it. Ice in his veins in this league in a way we've never seen. And I wish I had the number, but the last time a rookie ended up in the championship game at quarterback,
Mark Sanchez,
right? Was rookie for that one, right? He did. Okay. So yes, Sanchez did it with the Jets.
Let's go get a snack. Yeah. So we talk about Saquon a lot. Jalen Hurts, I guess, especially if you look at the number of carries, they're not all design runs. He's really your number 2 back. Gainwell doesn't even have 100 carries. But if you were to put Gibbs and Montgomery together, let's call them one back. I know it's not fair. Saquon, the one back, they're not playing each other, but bear with me. Gibbs and Montgomery, a one back. Let's put them together, like Mack and Biner or Brooks and Ickey. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
James Brooks and Ickey Woods. The two of them together, Gibbs and Montgomery, 2,200 yards and 28 rushing touchdowns. It's really like 2,187, 2,200 yards and 28 rushing touchdowns. That's just the rushing numbers. That's absurd. Here's the other thing about Gibbs. The way they're blowing holes through opposing defenses and giving him room to run, he's averaging 2.5 yards before contact.
That's just unfair.
And he's averaging 2.5 after contact. So, yeah, I can't see the Commanders outscoring that and stopping that enough. Let's get to the first game. It's also going to be freezing in Kansas City. Not as bad as what the Dolphins had to put up with last year when they went there and people legitimately lost limbs, or lost appendages. People, please dress warm at all 3 of these cold weather games in Buffalo, in Philly, and in Kansas City. Take it seriously. Please take it seriously. Layers, cover everything. The Chiefs are well rested. McCole Hardman's been ruled out. He's not going to play. But you have Hollywood. Obviously, they have Xavier Worthy. They have the speed. When I saw them, Xavier Worthy, this was week 13, 12, whatever. He's 14. The only guy on that team that could run. They're the slowest team I've seen all year, other than Xavier Worthy, who has the 4.21 and the fastest speed ever at the combine, and he scored a touchdown in that game. They just have no separation. It doesn't matter. Mahomes is a magician. He practices the dark arts. And this game comes down to what we saw last week, the pressure, the ability of DeMeco Ryans to send his guys on that crazy Matt Burke wide 9. It's all from the Philly and the Jim Schwartz and the Jim Johnson tree. Just go and get after a suspect offensive line. Joe Tooney's probably playing left tackle. First game that he played at left tackle was in Cleveland against Myles Garrett. Had a lot of help in that game, but he did well. He did well enough, right? He's a savvy veteran. He's got short arms. That's why he plays guard, but he did okay at left tackle. You put Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter in there and let them tee off and go eat. Mahomes is going to step up a lot in the pocket. He's going to find lanes, and he's going to find places to throw. It's about Derek Stingley. It's about Lassiter. It's about these corners sticking on Hopkins, most notably Hopkins, and obviously Kelsey as well. Those guys don't separate, but they've got savvy old man at the gym game, right? That old man at the gym that's got that, what my former college roommate Ian Brissett used to call the cheese hook, right? He's got a way to beat you at the gym on the court. All right, you don't know how. You're better, you're younger, you're faster, but whatever. He's got the little up and under game, and he's going to score on you. And DeAndre Hopkins, not to minimize him into that guy, nor Kelsey for that matter. They've been here, done that, and they're going to be just fine. Hopkins against his old team, even more interesting. I don't see the Chiefs losing at home because Mahomes, but more importantly because of Steve Spagnuolo. Steve Spagnuolo should be a head coach again. It isn't going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. Kevin Demoff, the Rams president, came out last year and made the point that when Spags was fired in 2011, and Kevin was part of the ownership and management group that fired Spags. They moved on. They got Jeff Fisher in 2012. That when Spags got fired, like, look, it wasn't all his fault. It was not a good situation, and he got fired. Spags is beloved by his players, but he's a hell of a coach. I trust Steve Spagnuolo to cook something up and to get after CJ Stroud and to keep this team in check enough for Mahomes to win it, because that's what he does.
He also does it in this round.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes, 6-0 divisional playoff record. That's a lot. By the way, 15-3 overall in the playoffs. Can we just sit on that for a second? I mean, the 18 games is impressive right there. I mean, if he played
that's another
playoff game
season. We always talk about how Kobe and LeBron have played, how many extra years of games tacking onto the wear and tear on their body in their career.
Much like with Brady, who you could say had 2 Hall of Fame careers, I think we will one day say that about Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. One day we will split up his career over the course of the years that he plays. But 15
how about 12 playoff games at home?
That's disgusting. In fact, we were talking about last year that was
12 at home.
It's so, I'm not even going to say it's unfair. There's obviously something he's doing. And as I've said many times, Andy Reid teaches and coaches this team at training camp for the situations at the end of games like this. Now, the one I can't get out of my head, and it'll have nothing to do with the players on the field for this one, but 2019, Texans up 24-0. Divisional round against the Chiefs in Kansas City.
That was the Deshaun game.
The Deshaun game where Bill O'Brien, a lot of people argue they actually, there was a 4th down near the goal line, and they were up 21-0. And instead of punching it in for 28-0, they went for the field goal, went up 24-0. But I thought at that time, it was the right call on the road to just put more points on. Chiefs scored 28 points in the second quarter. They won that game 51-31, which is crazy when it was 24-0 to think that. Also, what's amazing is to think that 2019 is not that long ago. Chiefs hadn't won a Super Bowl then. Not one. 2019 doesn't seem like that long ago.
Yeah,
but
I know.
This was not the Chiefs. I mean, they were essentially becoming the Chiefs in front of our eyes. They were becoming the Mahomes Chiefs in that moment. Think about it. Andy Reid had never won a Super Bowl to that point. He'd come close in Philly, but hadn't won one yet. And it was then and there that 2019 season that they were able to do that, beating the Niners, obviously, in that Super Bowl. And now they're going for 3 straight. This Texans team, I'm not even going to say I underestimated. I thought the Chargers were a better team. And clearly last Saturday, they were not. And Herbert was not better than Stroud in that game, although early on I thought there was an opportunity, certainly. This Texans team is impressive on the defensive line, and maybe you pointed it out, that if Hunter and Will can get after it that way with what is clearly the only weakness, really the only weakness for the Chiefs, other than maybe number of kickers they've used, is that offensive line. And they have figured it out enough. And again, when you look at point differential, that'll be where the Chiefs don't have it. But for a Chiefs team, back-to-back champs, to have a 15-win season, where also one of their losses was a complete throwaway, where they played nobody. This, I can't get the 24-0 out of my mind, which has nothing to do with this, but go back to December 21st. Texans and Chiefs in a game that mattered to both teams a lot. And
they stomped them.
And it ended. It was an 8-point game in the end, but it was not that close.
That game, in many ways, broke the Texans emotionally, understandably, with what happened to Tank Dell.
Tank Dell injury.
They didn't take him off on a John Deere. They took him off on a meat wagon.
I had never seen. By the way, had you ever seen that vehicle before on a football field? No. It looked like. I mean, I hate to say it. It looked like a horse track. It looked like a horse track.
Looked like something from like an old grainy World War II film.
It looked like something that happens on a horse track when they come out and they pull the curtain back. I mean, it was that terrifying. But I just thought emotionally the Texans fell apart, because think about it. The first play after Tank Dell was taken off the field was what? An extra point attempt that was missed. And the Texans never looked right. And in fact, I'll say they never looked right until the Chargers game. I mean, the last game of the season was against Tennessee, and yes, they got the win, but wasn't really a meaningful game in that sense, whereas the Chargers game clearly was in the wild card round. This is a monumental task. This would be the first time ever the Texans are in the championship round, which would be cute and cool. But I'm going to stick to what I've been saying all day here with you. The 5 best teams in the NFL, they're here, and the Texans ain't one of them. They're not. They're not.
But I give them credit for the way they played last week.
Sure.
Talked to some Chargers people this week, and I told them all the same thing, and that is, hey, you had a hell of a year. You got there a year early, and they all agreed. You know, it's like, hey, not like we weren't supposed to be here, but like this was a great start. We had a good year. Not satisfied with the loss, but satisfied with the overall picture. Moving forward, build off it. The Texans, great. Good for them. As you said, 6th time now that they made the divisional round. They're 0-5. So this is their chance to make it to the championship game. And if there's still a group of you out there questioning what Sam said about the game in Denver, like, why would you rest everybody? The rest versus rust and all this, give it up. So just consider this. The Chiefs are 4-0, and in those games, they're averaging nearly 33 points. The 4 times that they had a first round bye. Okay? So first round bye, they're at home. Well rested. 4-0, scoring 33 points a game. Now, you go, well, what about like those weeks where they rested Mahomes and they didn't have a first? Okay. Mahomes also didn't play in the final game at 2020, 2023, and 2024. So some of those, right? He just rested. Like, it doesn't affect him. It is a good thing. Get healthy, period. And that's what the Chiefs are. And they are going to, I will walk home, which is not fair because I'm at home. So I'll walk to the other side of the house. If they lose this game, they are going to be in their 7th consecutive AFC Championship game. And this one, unlike last year, is going to be at home. Now, it could be against the Ravens again, but this time it's going to be in Taylor's house.
This time,
it counts. That's an old joke. I don't even remember what that's from.
The All-Star game, the MLB All-Star game.
Oh, right.
Determining home field advantage in the World Series.
One of the dumbest things of all time. By the way, hopefully it's just quick. We're not going to do that baseball thing this year with like the golden at bat where you could bring somebody off the bench. You remember that thing that was floating about a month ago?
Yes. That's adorable.
Oh, God, that thing.
Yeah, it's adorable.
Wow.
All right, so you and I see it the same, by the way, right?
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
yeah.
there
You and I see it the exact same way. We see a rematch in the AFC Championship, and we see the two heavyweights in the NFC going up against each other in Detroit. That's what we see.
I mean, not exactly shocking. The AFC was on chalk last week, and the Commanders were the upset. I called that one. I know LeBron went 5-1. He got the Chargers game wrong. LeBron was on the Kelceys. We'll promote another pod here. We have no connection with them other than I love them both. I've worked with them both, and I think they're both amazing.
Have you seen the Friday night show, by the way, for Kelsey?
I have not yet.
I think you should check I was very wrong about the Vikings. That was
So that's that. Whatever. There's a show.
The greatest weekend of football, Andrew, as you said, or
greatest weekend of football
in the NFL.
Yes, and followed by Ohio State, Notre Dame, coming up on Monday. So, however and wherever you're listening to the show, to quote the Frugal Gourmet back in the day, I bid you peace. Hopefully you're safe and you enjoy your football and you take care of one another. Have a great weekend, everybody. For Sam, my name is Andrew. So long.